Welcome to another episode of Extreme Expat Stories of Thailand. Hi guys, I'll admit, when I first stumbled on this channel, I thought half of these tales were pure clickbait. They sounded too wild to be true. But after what happened to me, I promise, this is absolutely real. I've been watching your channel for a long time now and finally decided to share my own story. I am a 50-something guy from the States, a retired cop who moved to Thailand a couple of years ago to live quietly. Everything was going fine at first. I found a peaceful town in northern Thailand to retire in, even started a small English tutoring gig. I thought I had finally escaped my stressful old life. Then I met a charming German expat on Facebook. Let's call him Axel, who promised easy money through cryptocurrency investments. He spoke confidently about exclusive platforms with guaranteed 5 to 10% returns each month. As a former cop, I prided myself on sniffing out liars, but Axel was smooth and convincing. He even flew me to Phuket to show me fake trading dashboards. So when he asked for my life savings to invest in his platform, I blindly trusted him. Within months, I had handed over everything I had, over 40 million baht, more than $1 million, to Axel's so-called crypto scheme. Then he just vanished, cutting off all communication. I was completely ruined. It was eerie. I even remembered news of an Australian expat, Michael Rainaki, who lost his entire retirement fund, more than 40 million baht, in a Phuket crypto scam. Now I know how he must have felt. I was broken and had nowhere to go. My Thai wife, let's call her Dao, left me when she realized my money was gone. The quiet retirement dream I had hoped for had turned into a nightmare, and I felt utterly desperate. Around that time, a buddy from a Bangkok expat bar, we'll call him Jack, heard about my situation. He insisted I join him on a trip off the beaten path, something to forget the pain. Jack said he had a friend on the Thailand-Myanmar border who owned a small farm in the jungle. We'll relax, do some shooting, experience wild Thailand, he told me. I was very hesitant. I'd heard warnings about dangerous scams and kidnapping along the border. Even the US Treasury had warned about the prison-like call centers at the border where traffickers force victims to scam others online. But what did I have to lose? With nothing left, I agreed to go. Our adventure started innocently enough. We flew to Chiang Mai and rented a banged-up pickup truck, then drove west into Mae Hong Son province. Along the way, the scenery became increasingly jungle-like. The hills grew steeper. The road got narrower. And every few miles, we'd pass little roadside spirit houses, ornate miniature shrines on pedestals where locals left incense and snacks. Jack laughed and said, "Thais believe guardian spirits live in those. Treat them right and they'll keep you safe." I thought that was neat. Even if I was more worried about what lay ahead, it reminded me of an article I once read. Spirit houses are nearly everywhere in Thailand because many Thais believe that if properly appeased, guardian spirits on our property provides necessary safeguards from malevolent ghosts or ill-intending humans. With my mind racing about scams and criminals, I silently promised to be respectful anyway. That afternoon, we crossed into a remote border area near Mae Sot. Jack turned off the paved road onto a bumpy dirt trail. Our truck rattled over a shallow stream and passed more tiny spirit houses, then pulled up to a crumbling wooden shack surrounded by tall grass. Jack smiled and pointed. "This is my friend Nook's farm," he said. Nook, a friendly Karen man, maybe in his 40s, greeted us warmly. He had spiky hair, tanned skin, and a big grin. Helped him carry heavy jugs of water was his wife, a graceful, beautiful Karen woman. Let's call her Seri, with long dark hair braided down her back. She wore a colorful sarong and offered us strong herbal tea. Sawadee krap, I mumbled, trying my best Thai. They motioned us inside. It was rustic but comfortable. A bamboo shack, a handful of chickens clucking nearby, and a few wooden racks of crop seeds drying in the sun. After dusk, as we sat around a wood fire, I started to relax a bit. Nook and Seri were kind, and so was Jack. But a nagging dread kept pulling at me. I remembered reports of foreigners being lured into trouble around Mesot. Jack must have seen it on my face, because he patted my shoulder and said, "Don't worry, man. Nothing bad will happen. Just drink the tea and get some sleep." I drank the bitter tea, tried to chuckle off my worry, and drifted into a restless sleep on a thin mat. But morning came with a shock. As the sun crept through the rickety walls, a group of men in plain clothes suddenly appeared around our hut. They carried what looked like official badges and AK-style rifles. "Military check," one barked in Thai. Fear exploded inside me. I looked at Jack, who was just as shocked. Nook slid silently out of view. I didn't know what was happening, but I knew it couldn't be good. Before I could react, one of the men grabbed Jack and me. We were thrown into the back of a pickup truck, handcuffed and bruised as the vehicle lurched away. Jack yelled in Thai, "Where are we going?" The men just laughed and drove faster, disappearing down the trail. In my gut, I realized we were being kidnapped. After about an hour bumping through the jungle, we arrived at a hidden compound surrounded by barbed wire. Inside were hundreds of other people, mostly men from Africa and Asia. The atmosphere was surreal. Armed guards kept watch, and far off I could see rows of dilapidated buildings and open-air workstations. It looked like a grim combination of a prison and a cheap internet cafe. The guards shoved us inside a large barracks room. I later learned reporters called places exactly like this prison-like call centers, where victims are held by human traffickers to run online scams. I had always brushed off these news stories as exaggeration. Now I was living them. At first, we were just confused and terrified. The men in charge spoke broken English and Thai, and one of them pointed at us and barked, "Work!" They never explained what that meant. Each morning, we'd be shoved in front of phones and computers with headsets. "Work!" they'd yell. Gradually, it became horrifyingly clear. They wanted us to scam people. They rolled out printed photos of attractive models. They said girlfriends, and told us to pretend to be these women over video calls, sweet-talking strangers into sending money. If the client asked to speak to the model herself, a real woman would be brought over for live video to keep up the illusion. In short, we were forced to pretend we were people we weren't, coaxing unsuspecting victims to send cash. It felt like a scene from a twisted movie, except it was real, and I was trapped in it. Life there was pure brutality. We all slept on thin mats on the concrete floor, with dozens of other men. The air stank of sweat, fungus, and fear. Every day was the same. Wake up, eat whatever rice they gave us, if any, then work scam targets online. The monitors glowed relentlessly as our bosses shouted orders in Thai and Chinese. If the team's daily target wasn't met, the punishments were savage. I remember one morning when we were ordered out at dawn. A guard barked, "Stand up and clap," until our hands stung. Then he yelled, 200 squats. We dropped to the ground under the blazing sun and began squatting. My legs burned and my lungs felt like they'd collapse. When I slowed, one guard swung a heavy fist into my shoulder to keep me going. A fellow prisoner quietly whispered in broken English, "They told us, you will never go home." My heart sank. At the center, I met all kinds of terrified men. One was a 25-year-old from Bangladesh named Aryan. He had been working in Dubai hospitality when he was lured here by a fake IT job. Now he was forced to scam, shackled, even electrocuted with cattle prods if he missed a quota. I watched guards shackle a man who had not raised enough money. Arian later described chillingly that inside the jail they did not give you food. They didn't even give you water. In our own group, when someone failed, they pushed him into a dark cell and we could hear screams. I vividly recall one poor guy collapsing from the beatings. Heart attack, maybe, and bleeding out quietly on the floor. Nobody dared move him. We just kept working as his cries echoed down the hall. It was painfully true. These captors didn't give us food or clean water, just the barest scraps of rice once a day or less. Perhaps even worse than the physical violence was the mental torture. Each time a con worked and a mark sent money, the bosses would force us all to cheer and clap, celebrating the victim's loss like it was a victory. "It kills your mind," muttered another prisoner one day. I felt that happening to me, my mind numbing a little more each day. To distract myself at night, I remembered old Thai ghost stories I'd heard. In Thai folklore, a famous spirit, Manak, a grieving woman who died long ago and still haunts Phra Khanong. She is so well known that even today, many people still believe in the authenticity of the Manak legend, worshipping her shrine in Bangkok. I didn't expect to be scared by ghosts, but in that compound I started hearing strange sounds. A woman sobbing in the darkness, whispers along the bunk. One night, lightning flashed through a barred window, and for a split second, I thought I saw a pale woman in white just outside my bunk, her eyes empty. Then she was gone. It felt like the tortured spirits of the past victims were haunting the place. Every day bled into the next. We sat at computers reading messages from lonely men and women around the world, feigning patience, flirting, comforting, inventing crises, anything to get them to transfer money. The girls in the photos, models, we were told, moved from one station to another, performing live call rooms. I often caught myself staring at one of these women in passing. She was extraordinarily beautiful, tall, slender, with angelic features and a sad smile, as if she had been plucked from a magazine ad. The guards call her Kanya, nothing more than a model alias, I later realized, and said she was there to help keep the victims calm on video. Sometimes I caught a glimpse of her in a corridor, and my heart broke a little. I knew we were all prisoners here. She couldn't just be a volunteer prostitute. She must be a captive too. One day, the worst happened. I was working on a headset call when I saw a figure dragged away. A man from Bangladesh hadn't hit his target and was punished. They shoved him into a small dark room and beat him with bamboo sticks. I could hear each crack of the cane on his back. By the time they dragged him out, he was a bloody mess, barely moving. He had a heart attack right there. No one stopped. We all covered our eyes and kept scamming. One of the bosses even laughed and said, "Waste of life." I realized that if I didn't escape, I might never leave alive. I hadn't given up hope yet. Weeks passed and I studied the routines. Every morning, 2 guards would escort a handful of us outside for fresh air by some latrine. They were careless. Maybe they thought we were too broken to attempt anything. Then one afternoon, an opportunity came. A fellow prisoner in our team, badly beaten and injured, pretended he needed to go to the latrine. The guards, annoyed, said fine and walked us out under a flimsy metal shack. We were only about 50 meters from a muddy riverbank. At that moment, I suddenly bolted. I dove at one guard, slipping out of his grip. In 2 huge bounds, I cleared the latrine's railing. The guards yelled and fired a shot, but I was already slipping into the water. My chest pounded as I dove in head first, numb from adrenaline. The current immediately gripped me, but I kicked hard and kicked faster. The guard on the bank took aim and fired twice. I felt the crack of bullets in the air above me, but kept swimming. After what it felt like an eternity, I felt my feet hit something solid. I had reached the other shore, soaked and gasping, but alive. I climbed out onto slippery rocks. My lungs burned, and my clothes were soaked through. Behind me, I heard shouts and the rev of motorcycle engines. Men were pursuing me on bikes, headlights bouncing through the trees. I didn't stop. I sprinted barefoot onto the underbrush, branches ripping at my face, my heart hammering in my ears. The rain had started, warm tropical droplets washing the grime off my skin as I ran without a plan except forward. For nearly an hour I ran blind. My legs were on fire, feet cut and bleeding, but I kept going. I crashed through thorns, stumbled over fallen logs, and cursed silently at every vine that tripped me. I remember Jack's warning, "Be careful. These border jungles are hideouts for criminals." Now alone, I truly believed it. When my body gave out, I collapsed against the trunk of a scraggly tree. My hands were torn to shreds, and I could taste blood and salt sweat in my mouth. For a long moment I lay there, utterly lost and on the verge of passing out from hunger and exhaustion. Night was coming on quickly, and the jungle around me pulsed with strange sounds, croaking frogs, distant animal cries. As I lay there, drenched and freezing under a rubber tree, I thought about the cabin where Nook's farm had been. Back then, we had passed many of those little spirit shrines at trees and crossroads. In desperation, I closed my eyes and remembered what Jack had told me about the spirits. Even I had quietly dropped food at those shrines to try and appease them. So right there in the mud, I performed a makeshift ritual, scooping muddy water from a puddle with a leaf. I drank it to quench my thirst. It tasted bitter and filthy, but I raised my face to the dripping leaves above and whispered a shaky thank you to whatever guardian spirit might be listening. It sounds crazy, but I truly felt something, maybe 100 breakable seconds where all the danger seemed to pause. Suddenly, a flash of lightning cracked through the sky, illuminating the forest with blinding light. In that flash, I could have sworn I saw a woman in white, standing on a nearby fallen log, her long hair swirling around her. My breath caught in my throat. The next instant it was gone. I wasn't sure if I was hallucinating. I had been half drowning and barely moving for hours. But I felt a surge of courage. Whether spirit or my own mind, something told me keep going. I stumbled onward into the darkness. By dawn, I was completely disoriented, but I had managed to crawl up a ridge. In the pale gray light I saw below something almost miraculous. A tiny village of wooden huts with small lanterns burning outside. A few villagers, armed men in ragged uniforms, were moving about. This had to be one of the caravan settlements I'd heard about. I heaved my bloody arms out of the ditch and hobbled towards them, fear mixed with hope. How would they react to a sweaty foreigner bursting into their village at dawn? I gathered what strength I had and shouted in broken Karen, a language Jack had taught me at the bar. Kolop titi Amerikun kian chumkan choon chai duai. I am American, a teacher. I need help. 2 villagers with old rifles immediately stood up. I raised my shaking palms to show I meant no harm, and they beckoned me over. They ushered me under the shelter of a small bamboo hut where a few others were eating rice porridge. A middle-aged Karen man with kind eyes was first. He introduced himself as Fan and mentioned to me to sit. Next to him, a young Karen woman, slender, maybe late 20s, with calm brown eyes and long hair, brought me a bowl of porridge and warm water. She said her name was Mai, a village nurse. You safe now, she said gently in accented Thai. Relief flooded me. For the first time in days, I let the tears come. and Mai quietly put a hand on my shoulder. She washed the cuts on my feet and bandaged them with clean cloth, smiling kindly, even as my lip quivered. I still remember thinking, this kind, brave woman risked her life to save me. She was beautiful, with a serenity I'll never forget, a guardian angel in the jungle. The villagers gathered around as I told my frantic story in bits of broken Thai and English. Fan and Mai listened intently. When I mentioned fleeing the Thai police or military, Pan's expression hardened. He raised his rifle and growled in Karen, with a surprised interpreter translating. No, this border is ours. We protect those in need. From his tone, I sensed he meant I would be safe here. Soon, he used an old radio handset to call someone. Within an hour, a small patrol of Karen National Army soldiers arrived, ragtag but armed. I had heard of them from news reports. I was terrified. I knew the KNA had a dark reputation, but these men questioned me briefly and then, much to my surprise, they decided not to turn me in. Instead, they offered to take me back across the border to Thailand. I sensed a rough code of honor here. They were fighters who lived on these lands, and now they were choosing to help me. I still remember stepping barefoot into Thai soil again. It felt like emerging from the tomb. The Karen men handed me off quietly at an invisible checkpoint. Within minutes, I was in the custody of Thai authorities at a small provincial immigration office. They eyed me warily. I was a ghost of the man I used to be, dirty, injured, no passport, and babbling in unbelievable tale about being kidnapped and forced to scam. Initially, they treated me like a suspect, not a victim. I heard a burly immigration sergeant whisper, "Drug runner?" or worse, under his breath as they threw me into a grim detention cell with about 100 other inmates. The cell was a concrete box with barred windows. It reeked of urine, sweat, and antiseptic. In one corner, an old man coughed violently, blood on his lips. Cockroaches skittered everywhere. I thought back to something I'd read on a travel forum, that Thai jails are notorious for cockroaches everywhere. Seeing it firsthand was sickening. The guards placed me on a plastic bench and gave me a single bowl of watery rice porridge. That night, shivering under a thin blanket, I drifted between despair and gratitude to still be alive. During the next few days, I learned I had been placed in an immigration detention center. I met a British man named Liam, who had lost 12 kilos from the awful food and even contracted hepatitis. I watched my own pounds melt away. Every cough and moan around me reminded me to keep putting one foot in front of the other. Through it all, I silently thanked that faint spirit I felt in the jungle. Whatever it was, it had brought me this far. After about a week of tense waiting, something changed. Perhaps the news of foreign men being freed on the Myanmar side from those Karen militia camps had reached them. Thai police finally agreed to listen. They found my story plausible enough, especially when the U.S. Embassy vouched for me. A consular officer from my embassy arrived, showed his badge, and arranged for immediate medical checkups. I was finally treated as the victim I was. They took me to the hospital for evaluation. I lay in a clean bed while a doctor took my pulse and drew blood. They discovered I was severely dehydrated and malnourished. My immune system had collapsed from just 1 week in that hell. The doctor noted I looked younger than my 55 years, but only because I'd lost so much weight. He also tested me for infections. I was positive for hepatitis, likely contracted from dirty conditions. He gave me medicine and IV fluids. Lying there, I had nightmares all over again, visions of endless phone calls, blazing sun, and sinister faces. On some nights at the hospital, I awoke covered in sweat and heart racing as if being dragged back into that cell. I've since flown back home with nothing but a backpack and scars on my soul. I'm alive, yes, but I'm not the same man who went to Thailand. I often lie awake thinking of the friends I made in that nightmare. Jack, who tried to help me. Mai, the brave village nurse. Ariane, who risked everything to escape and helped me find courage. I remember the local Karen man, Fan, telling me, "We protect friend." That was the sweetest thing I ever heard. He risked everything to save me, and I owe him my life. Now I tell people that Thailand isn't just temples and beaches. There is a wild underbelly. My nightmares, ghosts in the jungle, scam, prisons, sound crazy to most Western ears, but I know the reality. I lived it. Investigative reports from all over the internet and others confirm that everything I went through, from secret call centers guarded by militia to captives being tortured with electric prods, bamboo rods, and starvation, all confirm that my story is not just my story. Anyway, I'm fine now. It took a long time to heal, but I'm still in therapy and dealing with survivor's guilt. I may never go back to Thailand, to be honest, but by telling this story, I hope others will stay safe. Thailand gave me a second chance at life, even if it was the craziest, most painful year of my life. Thank you for letting me share it.